Thank you very much for this broad-reaching conversation. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Michelle.
Chris Hedges is a Pulitzer Prize-winning American journalist and best-selling author. He's in town for the Web Summit in Vancouver. 5:47 now. This is On the Coast on CBC, and Charlie's back with a look at the roads.
Yes, let's start in Surrey along 128th Street. Both north and southbound volume is very heavy between 58 and 62nd Avenues. A collision is responsible for that. Over in Burnaby on Lougheed Highway, eastbound flow is sluggish between Kingsland Drive and Kensington Avenue. Seeing reports of a crash there. And finally in Vancouver on Marine Drive, westbound traffic is just crawling between Elliott Street and Inverness Street. Looks like crashes to blame for that. If you see anything on the roads that you think we should know about, you have one last chance to text us, 236-330-2623.
Charlie, thank you so much. 13 minutes before 6 o'clock now. This is On the Coast here on CBC. Well, CBC Music's Grant Lawrence is back, and today he revisits the golden age of the protest song. Here's Grant.
Well, as you are well aware, if, say, you listen to CBC News, there is a lot going on in the world right now. And depending on where you sit or what you believe in, you could say that a lot of it is not good. In the past, our times were reflected back to us by the songwriter, the protest singer, making sure that dark moments in history were not forgotten. Like when Neil Young sang about the events at Kent State University on May 4th, 1970, when the Ohio National Guard opened fire into a protest of the Vietnam War, leaving 4 students dead and 9 others wounded.
This summer I hear the drumming, for dead in Ohio. A handful of senators don't pass legislation, then marches alone can't bring integration. When human respect is disintegrating, this whole crazy world is just too frustrating. And you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. I pity the country, I pity the state, and the mind of a man thrives on hate.
Those are just a few of the protest songs from the past that mirrored and documented troubled times. That was a bit of Indigenous Canadian singer Willie Dunn with a bit of his 1971 protest song, I Pity the Country. Also in there, gravel-voiced American protest singer Barry McGuire with Eve of Destruction that was a #1 hit in 1965. But here we are today with all sorts of things happening in this continent and around the world. But where are the Neil Youngs and the Barry McGuires and the Willie Dunns and the Sam Cookes of 2026? Thank goodness for the boss, who is still taking a stand at age 76.
And there were bloody footprints where mercy should have stood.
In 2022, we reached Magnus Hansen Heine, who owns the Headington Shark House in Oxford, England. His father built the giant shark statue that appears to be plunging through its roof. But his situation was different from Ms. Teal's in one key way. The local council actually wanted to honor the shark by adding it to the Heritage Registry. And surprisingly, that is what Mr. Hansen Heine took issue with.
Mr. Hansen Heine, it's not everyone who gets to have a shark on their roof. Why wouldn't you want to have it recognized as a heritage site?
Well, that's a good question. It really comes down to the meaning of the artwork, which was a few things, but one of the main strands was opposition to the use of the planning laws and government restrictions to censor what kind of art people were and also weren't allowed to see. And really to make the point that with public art in particular, that shouldn't come down to the decision of a small number of people, be that in the council or the wider government.
Right, it was built as an act of defiance. But before we talk about that, can you just describe, because we are talking on the radio, describe for people what this looks like?
Well, the Headington Shark House is a 25-foot fiberglass and steel sculpture of a shark, which I suppose nominally represents a bomb, crashing through the roof of a house in an otherwise perfectly ordinary and somewhat leafy suburb of Oxfordshire in England.
And it's quite distinctive, right? Nobody would miss it.
I can't imagine you do, so it's quite a surreal sight to behold.
You've lived in this house. Is it a surreal thing to live in a house with a shark jutting out the roof?
Well, oddly enough, it was my dad who did it a year before I was born, so I grew up with it as just part of the family, as it were. So it's not surreal in that sense, but to live there is quite special, and you do get a lot of visitors snapping pictures of the house.
I'm sure you do. So tell us why your dad built it then.
So essentially, he first bought the house in 1986, and he was moving in, and you have this sort of sense when you're buying your first house and moving into it of safety and future planning. And on the first night he was there, he was sort of woken up by the sound of what turned out to be fighter jets or bombers going overhead to bomb Tripoli in Libya. And he woke up and read the paper the next day and saw these other people's quote-unquote safe houses destroyed by warfare. So that
Adamant, The Guardian has called the story one of the most notable triumphs of British eccentricity over petty bureaucracy. So, given that was the city's position initially, what changed to make the council now want to celebrate the shark instead of tear it down?
Well, I'm not sure they are celebrating the shark. I think they're quite explicitly ignoring the meaning and sentiment and doing something that's actually quite destructive to that side of the artwork, be that through ignorance, willful or otherwise. But in terms of the narrative of preservation, in quotes, which again I don't think they're really doing, there's no threat to the physical structure either, mine. It comes down to two things. The first of which is that original council has been replaced. So none of those original councillors are still there, and new councillors have come along. And over the intervening 30-odd years, essentially it's gone from, let's say, its disruptive origins to something that everyone broadly loves in the area. So there's a sense of just enjoyment of the shark and appreciating it as a quirky tourist attraction, and also as a surreal artwork, which is part of the purpose. People get to come and see this, something that's, you're walking down a street and you see suddenly this massive shark through the roof of a house. It's designed to make you look twice and sort of think again. But people that engage with it on that level and don't necessarily know the history are perhaps missing that sort of anti-establishment side of it, which I think the council has done in this case.
Just maybe explain that a bit more. I mean, how does establishing it as a heritage site work against what the original intent was?
Well, the original intent, as I mentioned, was specifically or partly around not having bureaucrats decide for the public. Mm-hmm. And in this case, before, when they hated it, you couldn't possibly have it, and there was a fight to be had there. And they were trying to use the planning apparatus and the laws and the sort of threat implied behind that to forcibly remove it. And now